Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Into the Void podcast. This one is going to be a little more rock and roll heavy this time around. I'm going to feature the bands that I was apologizing to from the last episode, and so this one's gonna be a little rock heavy. I'm gonna put the saga of my college experience on a bit of a hiatus for now. I think next time I'm gonna start talking about my tenure at LBCC for 2 years. I think I'll have a podcast completely dedicated to that, and in order to cover all the bases and go in depth. This one will be a little bit of a break. I'm going to feature some of these bands that we're playing. If anybody wants to turn in any of their own music for any reason at all, if you are a band that is, or a musician that is wanting your music featured, I will still obviously do that and do episodes with that. It's just a bunch of more stuff that I can create with a bunch more podcasts that I can feature and make. So that'll help me out on, I guess, on content is what people like to call it, content. If you don't know, I hate that word. But yeah, so we're not going to waste a whole lot of time in terms of me talking, especially when I say there's music. You're going to want to be able to listen to the music. However, I want to get a few things out of the way. First, still me, no Ryan yet. I think we're going to plan something out. We're kind of in the middle of that, at least one last time before we all maybe go our separate ways. But that's still in the making, so I'm not going to go too deep into that. Of course, I need to preserve my mysticism. Excuse me, thirsty. Lose your voice really fast. Anyways, yeah, so, and also, can't forget, the theme song was by Retro Shred Metal still. I like all of his other songs. I want to feature a bunch of other wrestling themes, but it's just really hard to get away from that nice chugging riff of the Seth Rollins theme song. You can find him on Facebook, Retro Shred Metal, and also on Instagram. I don't know if he has any other social media outlets, but I'm sure he might. You can ask him on either of those social media outlets I gave you, and he can probably direct you otherwise. Another thing, in order to reach, so like I said on the last show, my the show, the podcast, social media is sort of on a lockdown except for the Facebook page. So if you go to Facebook/Into the Void Cast, you can send us post on the wall, or send a message if you want things featured for music or anything in terms of if you wrestling fans out there listen to anything and you want me to talk wrestling for a little bit and you have a topic or a subject or a concept you want to discuss, send in a message on our Facebook, post on the wall, leave a comment, whatever. That way I can just take a look at it, and then we can I can give you my 2 cents. I know it seems like the market is saturated in terms of or oversaturated in terms of wrestling podcasts. So I'd like to try to make it somewhat unique to myself and unique to something that is engaging to the listener. Anything else, though, you want to call a topic on, that's cool. I'm also going to give you, it might be easier to do it in email form. And Into the Void has an email address. Unfortunately, I have not been able to recover that yet either. So I'm going to do a little inside baseball with you guys and give you my personal email, and that is Dooley, DOOLEYS at OregonState.edu, and I'll just use that email. If you have any music topics, you want to talk metal music, classic rock music in general, and if you want to talk wrestling, anything that has to do with that. I'm a little more into WWE. I finally found Ring of Honor, though, on my TV. I've been looking for ages. So I've yet to have watched it enough to form an opinion on that. I try to watch New Japan as well. So anything like that, if you have any topics along the lines of pro wrestling in either of those promotions, I'm sure I can sustain a decent level of not expertise, but knowledge where I can have a good conversation with you guys and have an opinion on something. If you want to do that, if you want to email or post on our Facebook about anything that has to do with music, I am quite a big fan of music as well. So you'd be like, hey, what do you think of this new album? What do you think of this band? What do you think of that band? What do you think of this song? What do you think of this type of music? Whatever it has to do with that, please hit me up, and I'll talk about that too. And if you also have featured music you want played, I'll do that as well. So I know it seems a little passé that I am a rock and roll fan. I mean, I still call it rock and roll. That's kind of an old term. But, all right, let me tell you something, though, first. When I'm making pauses in the podcast, sometimes it's a little bit to catch my breath or collect my thoughts or take a swig of water, because believe it or not, even just talking for an amount of time really dries out your throat. And even if you're talking to a microphone, it really amplifies it. I have yet to get any pop filters or anything like that, which is why you hear a bunch of popping and pee popping, and you probably hear me breathing too much. I know, it sucks. That is just the nature of the really unprofessional and really amateur nature of this podcast as it stands right now. But so when I'm making these pauses, I'm not doing the old sports broadcaster thing or the youth pastor thing. That's one of my biggest pet peeves, honestly, is when you sit there and then you're listening to a sports radio and they're like, well, let me tell you something right now. And then they take a pause like they're about to break some sort of groundbreaking, profound phrase. And it's like, well, first of all, you're talking about sports, so how groundbreaking can you really get? So they're like, I know I have an opinion, but or I have this opinion, but it'll be a little controversial, but it has to be said. Okay? And then they pause and they say, LeBron James is a very good basketball player. Okay, we all kind of know that. I don't know why you have to do the little pause like you're, blowing our minds by saying something. So they like to do that little pause in between everything where, you sit there and you're like, okay, waiting for it, and disappointment. Because you're like, that is not news to anybody else. And I get it, though. I mean, honestly, how do you fill 24 hours talking about sports? I'm a fan of sports, certain sports. I like playing certain sports, but I'm not a huge fanatic about it. Frankly, playing it in junior high and a little bit in high school kind of burned me out on it all, the extreme fandom of it, and I didn't like the way the locker room acted around each other. So that's just the way it is. And I luckily had other interests outside of sports where I was able to kind of take off on those and find friends that did that too. So that's one of the beauty of skateboarding too. Is another thing that I love is skateboarding is you can really do it by yourself, and if you do it with friends, it's not like they're getting in your way necessarily. So yeah, and then youth pastors like to also do that whole sports broadcaster noise too. They'll say something like, God loves gay people. And of course, that is in the church. That is, really controversial. So he'll pause and he'll say, "Now let me say that again. God loves gay people." And he says, "I know what you're thinking." And then goes into all that and talks about it. And then in the end, he's like, "See, I told you. It was just a weird. It's kind of a verbal clickbait, if you will." So yeah. Anyways, wow, got way off track. Anyhow. Just letting you know, I'm not pausing to do any of that nonsense. Frankly, that's why I try to keep from doing too many pauses in between what I'm saying. I know it sounds like a giant run-on sentence, but I'm trying to, fake being well-spoken since podcasts is the same as radio, and you have to fill dead air. But yeah, so going back to rock and roll and rock music in general, I'm not like 90% of the white kids in my area. I'm not a huge fan of hip hop. I mean, of course, I'm not completely against it. I enjoy some of the stuff. There are a couple good songs that are catchy and catch my eye. A lot of them have to do with being, kind of sound like a interesting poppy rock song and that kind of stuff. So I'm not necessarily against that. Certain pop music, sure, I guess. I mean, nowadays, I love 80s pop. That's definitely a pop music that I can say I outright love. Can't say necessarily the same for new pop music now. I tried listening to 104.7 one day just to see where that station is at. And I only lasted about a minute and a half tops before I kind of switched it off, because it all just kind of sounded the same to me. In fact, there was actually a song change and I didn't even notice because I thought it was the same song. It's like, wow, this is a really long song. Turns out it was 2 different songs, weirdly enough. So, but yeah, so I am a huge fan of rock. I'm obsessed with rock. I've listened to it for the longest time. My dad taught me everything I need to know about rock and roll, and then I went off into my own little historic background and researching the history of rock and roll and where it is today and why it is today. And I think I had a great teacher in my dad. If you've ever watched the sitcom That 70s Show, my dad pretty much said, yeah, that's essentially how it was. He moved all over the place, but he spent his formative years, if you will, I guess, in Alaska. And he said, that 70s Show? He's like, that was exactly my life, because, he graduated in 79, just like the kids, so he was exactly their age. And he said we even had a basement in our house that we would hang out in a lot and listen to records. He said really the only key difference is that me and my brother were white and the rest of my friends were black. He's like, that's really the only difference between his actual life and that 70s Show. So it was almost a direct parallel of his life. So you can see that he comes from that generation of rock fanatics and, music lineage. So I kind of got that same sort of education as well. So unfortunately, when I say I'm like a metal fan, I'm always, talking about metal in the context of the 70s and 80s. So to me, that's Judas Priest, Deep Purple, Led Zeppelin, Black Sabbath. Then, of course, going into Iron Maiden in the late 70s, early 80s. Instead, because then some people are like, oh, yeah, so you listen to this band, this band, this band. It's like, yeah, not so much the newer ones, because honestly, newer metal, not new metal, and new metal. I mean, I guess some of the stuff I like, but I'm not. New metal is complicated for me because I do listen to a lot of the newer metal, and that's kind of what made me kind of go backwards, because I saw all their influences and then saw or heard the bands that influenced them, which were ones from 60s, 70s, and so on. And then I'd go back and see, well, who influenced Led Zeppelin then? And a bunch of blues artists: Muddy Waters, Howlin' Wolf, Willie Dixon, all those guys, Robert Johnson, and go back and hear that. But the newer metal is kind of complicated to me, because I'm not a huge fan of blast beats. Not a huge fan of pig squeal vocals. Blast beats I'll still kind of listen to. I'm more of a fan of the double bass sound, honestly, and cleaner vocals. However, in music like those metal bands that have the big squeals and blast beats or whatever, they have amazing guitar riffs. Some of the best guitar riffs and awesome guitar riffs I've ever heard. And sometimes the bands with the clean vocals and the double bass don't always have the best guitar riffs. And of course, that's malleable and changes all the time. But in general, that's just kind of how it is in my experience. So it's always kind of hard for me to find those bands with those epic guitar riffs mixed with, clean vocals and and double bass drums, without all the black metal black death metal stuff, and Venom, Gorgoroth, all those kind of bands. Mayhem, maybe not Mayhem. I think they're a little more clean vocals. I don't remember. I'm a little rusty on that kind of metal history, but they're out there though. Those type of bands are out there, and I try to find them. I will say, I listen to bands like Amon Amarth, because even though he growls, for one, it sounds badass, but for two, I can actually still understand what he's saying. I can hear the lyrics. That's kind of the biggest thing for me. I like lyrics. I write lyrics every once in a while. I'm a big fan of that, so I like to hear it. But yeah, so despite my narrow taste in music in terms of like what I'll listen to every day, I have a wide range of eras that I enjoy, in terms of metal music and rock in general. Can't hate on Zeppelin, can't hate on Lynyrd Skynyrd. Those are just classics, straight up classics, and I love that music. And that music had a certain energy and aggressiveness, just in its core, and innately than so much as sound. And sometimes even with the sound it comes, happens. But I can't believe that, you can listen to Led Zeppelin 3 and say, man, that's a heavy album, because it's mostly acoustic, but somehow they make every acoustic song sound just straight up badass. So that's where I stand on that. I will still talk any metal band though, any rock band, anything like that. So going through that and kind of exploring the history of rock and roll, and the way the music industry is now, the way it's ever changed, and the way it is changing, and just kind of all the things surrounding the sound of music too, and what gets popular and whatnot. Some people like to say rock and roll is dead, and as much as you don't want to make an AC/DC reference, it's true. Because they say it's a lack, there's no talent anymore, no one plays instruments anymore, blah blah blah. And I would say I probably used to be of that ilk, or that group of people. I was like, man, rock is dead. There's no hope for it, blah blah blah. And I don't know if I necessarily agree with that anymore. I think maybe it's on life support. I don't think it's dead. Honestly, I think there is plenty of talent out there. You just gotta kind of, I know it sounds stupid, but you kind of gotta look for it and find it. I mean, it's hard, usually I'm the type of guy, I'll listen to the radio. I'll still listen to terrestrial radio, old school radio. And I hear, a song I like. I'll say my guilty pleasure band, especially right now, is Avenged Sevenfold. I know they're a little, crapped on by some of the metal elitists out there, so that's why I say guilty pleasure, because they're too mainstream. But honestly, I love it. I think they're a great band. I've recently got very into them. I'm sure I'll get out of it in enough time, and kind of dial back. But I don't know. It's just sometimes that's the way it is, and unfortunately, and it's hard to argue against it too when. Close to 10 years ago, you had 101.1 KUFO in Portland, a hard rock station, get cut, and now become KXL talk radio. And then down here in the mid Willamette Valley, you had 101.5 K Fly, kind of the last station that was holding up the rock and hard rock radio a couple years ago, get cut, including the Donkey Show, which is kind of the inspiration for this podcast. Actually, what made me want to get into kind of radio type of stuff, and talking in front of a mic, basically, outside of stand up. And so a couple years ago they got cut, and now they're some sort of Goo Goo Dolls Coldplay radio station. And so it's hard to argue, say, well, if rock isn't dead, then why, are these radios getting cut? Why is it, taking the backseat to Taylor Swift or Miley Cyrus or Beyonce? I don't know if they're even popular anymore. That just shows you how up to date I am. But anyway, so yeah, why are they taking the backseat to that and not a whole lot of award shows or anything like that? And well, I think that rock kind of started off as kind of the rebellious thing, and was kind of a anti-establishment movement, and then kind of thanks to Led Zeppelin, I guess you could say, but that era of time between the mid 60s to the late or mid 70s, rock became kind of corporate, and then there was punk that came out of response to rock and roll, and then it kind of swings back and forth like that. And I think we're just in that kind of downswing where I think rock is no longer corporate, but it'll, come back and maybe take a front seat again in the music world, if enough people, kind of say, no, I don't want this, drone music or whatever. I want the, real music or whatever, because there's plenty of people out there that know how to play instruments. They love playing instruments. They're really good at it, and they make themselves known to people. And so I don't think it's necessarily dead. I think it's kind of back on the rise. I think it's where it needs to be, honestly. I think there's plenty of people who will stick around and be into instruments and playing instruments and music. And I'm not necessarily going to be an authority on it, because I am a failed musician, if you will. I've tried, 2 different instruments, and I play them very mediocrely. I don't know if that's a word, but I'm very not great at it, and I still love it too. So that talent, there's still talented people out there, and I think that if you don't necessarily have to, they say look for, you think, oh great, I'm just gonna go dig around the internet, but that's not necessarily what you got to do. It's just, sometimes you're just a slave to where you live. Like in our area now, there's just no rock music around, because people generally prefer pop music or whatever. And so I don't necessarily think it's dead. It's just taking a back seat. It's kind of flying under the radar, and you can still listen to those old bands you enjoy, and you can find newer bands, and they make themselves known to you, and by whatever means that is, that's just how it happens. And well, I think I've bloviated long enough. I'm going to go ahead and start giving you guys some music samples. And in order to send or have a real sincere apology to these bands, I did some research. I went on their band camps. I bought all their songs because, support local music and all that. And I tried to find at least once the songs that they had sent us originally, and then I wanted to find at least one song from each newer album that was there in the meantime of 2 years. So I did my best, and I hope this works out. So I am going to take it away, and the first band here is called 10-Foot Wizard. Their website, or kind of where to find all their central hub, is 10-Foot Wizard, foot spelled F-O-O-T, so it's just 10footwizard.bandcamp.com. And from my research, they appear to be a band from Manchester, UK. Of course, there's always some good stuff coming out of Western and Northern Europe in terms of music. And so, it's funny because a lot of these guys like to say they're, psychedelic rock and stuff, and that's what they say. But a lot of these guys, man, they got some good, dirty sounding stuff. It's a lot like, kind of a dirty blues or just a good old school hard rock sound. But anyway, so the next, this will be 3 songs by 10 Foot Wizard from Manchester, UK. The first one will be called Up and Away, from their album Sleeping Volcanoes, and this one is from 2015, and this was the album that they had originally sent us. And so there's that. And the second song is called 6 Feet Rising. That one just really stuck out to me. I really love that one. I kind of listened to all their albums and kind of picked out the song that I really enjoyed. So we got 6 Feet Rising from Return to the Infinite from, it looks like there's our older stuff. So from 2013, 6 Feet Rising. And of course, Night Witch is another good heavy song that I really like. This one looks like it was from a special B-side. They did a split record with a friend band of theirs. I don't remember what the other band was called. I'm really sorry the other band, but I'm sure if you go to 10footwizard.bandcamp.com, you'll be able to see who that other band was. But this song I really enjoyed. This one's from 2017, so it looks like earlier this year, and or really recently this year, they released that song. So the first song, again, will be Up and Away from the Sleeping Volcanoes album, followed by 6 Feet Rising from Return to Infinite album, and Night Witches. This one here is 10 Foot Wizard.
It is not words.
There's something on my mind. I've got something here for you. It's burning up inside. Lord, what am I to do? There's something deep in me.
All right, everybody, that was 10 Foot Wizard. And once again, 10footwizard.bandcamp.com. Wow, I suck. I'm a dumbass because I forgot that I couldn't buy Night Witches, and so I only had 2 songs of 10 Foot Wizard. But the next band, Duel, has 3 songs that I'm pretty sure I have. I bought them all. They are from Austin, Texas. They also have a Bandcamp. It's duel3.bandcamp.com. DUEL, the number 3.bandcamp.com. These guys are pretty sick too. They play just good old dirty rock and roll. Excuse me. So the first song will be This Old Crow from the Fears of the Dead album. All these songs are from the Fears of the Dead album from 2016. When they sent us the original music, they were looking to give us a taste of their future album. That was about a year before the album got released. So now it looks like they have it all finished at duel3.bandcamp.com. The first song is This Old Crow. The second one is The Kraken, and Electricity is the third and final one from Duel. So I'm going to go ahead and play those next 3 ones for you. And so here we go, guys. Duel. Woo! All right, everyone. That was Duel. All three of their songs this time around. And yeah, so and the third and final band is a band called Mount Hush. I think they were one of the first bands that, I think if not the first band to take a look at our podcast and ask us to play their music. They are a band from Germany, it looks like, according to my research. I only got as far as Germany. At first, I thought they were just from Europe in general, maybe Northern Europe. Anyhow, yeah. So I really like their sound a lot. Very kind of this one actually was legit psychedelic, and their song their song Interstellar Smoke reminds me a lot of like a mix between Tool, Sleep, and just kind of post-rock music in general, like Explosions in the Sky and Caspian. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to get that song without being illegal in terms of ripping their music. I didn't want to rip them off, so I decided to buy the songs that they had sent us on the messaging. So we got Mount Hush. They are also on Bandcamp, Mount Hush, MountHush.bandcamp.com. Pretty much just Bandcamp, man. That's the place to go for good music, apparently. So it's all spelled out, Mount Hush, MountHush. The songs will be two of them from Lo and Behold album from 2015. That's the album they sent. The first song is The Spell, and the second one is King Beyond. So yeah, here we go, guys. Mount Hush.
see that I was drowned with lies. Hear the jester laughing while he holds the way down the road. Lies an ocean full of truth. So I walk down the line, a long lost time and youth. Hear the jester laughing while he holds the crown. A king is just a broken man in a broken land. Strange days have found me, carry me up, all stepping stones thrown away. Simple man I used to be, seems to be the remedy. Keep me moving through the ashes, behold what you once were. In the shades on the far side, you were danced by light. Longing for a no man's land, a drifter can't be bound by charge. Lay down your crown, king me Strange days have found me, all stepping stones thrown away. The simple man I used to be, seem to be. Strange days have found me, carry me up, all stepping stones thrown away. The simple man I used to be, seems to be the remedy. Carry me
All right, everybody. That was Mount Hush at bandcamp.com. And there we go. Those are all the bands that so far we have gotten requests from. Again, if you want to send anything in to get played or send anything in to get talked about, that's Dooley, DOOLES, at OregonState.edu, or comment or message or anything on the Into the Void podcast Facebook page. That's facebook.com/IntoTheVoidCast. Those words exactly. Thank you, everybody, for listening to this episode. I'm hoping to also continue my interesting story about my going on 7 years in college now. Yeah, my decade of dominance, if you will. So without further ado, this is Sean here. Thank you for listening. Hit me up and be on the lookout for everybody. And this is, be looking for retro shred metal too. And everything he's got going. I have a lot of things that I'm hoping to talk about and topics I'd like to discuss, and I could use your guys' help for that as well. Excuse me. Thank you, everybody. And this is Into the Void podcast. And I'll see you around, or I'll see you another time. Thank you.